This video is about therapeutic discomfort and leaning into pain. No one likes pain. Pain is the body's way of getting our attention. The pain in our body and our lives causes us to acknowledge the existing conditions and do something about it. Human nature is such that most of the time we are creatures of habit and do not typically seek out change. Pain is a messenger that change of some kind is needed. Minimal pain can be ignored and often it goes away or diminishes over time. At least it seems to go away on its own. What our bodies actually do with low levels of pain is turn away the mental focus on the signals that we have pain. The signals going to our brain are still going, but the brain redirects our attention away from them. This allows us to continue to do things without mentally paying attention to the effects of what we're doing is having on us. Much low-level pain does not require our focus or attention and often is short-lived. Moderate pain, on the other hand, doesn't go away on its own. It can be the result of accumulation of one or more minimal pains which have not resolved themselves or the result of some new and present condition. Moderate pain does call our mental focus and attention and gives us the motivation to make some change to resolve it. This is the main motivating force in all of us. Motivation to make change is far more influential in our lives to avoid pain than to seek pleasure. This is also human nature. Human nature is responsive to the need to adapt. Only once we have a significant enough level of pain that the pain of not making a change is greater than the discomfort of what we see and believe will be the discomfort involved in making a change. We are basically designed to maintain the status quo in our lives as much as possible. This primal predisposition does not serve our highest and best interests in life beyond mere survival. Keeping a status quo may actually threaten our survival. Many people find that even when threatened with extinction, some changes still seem unacceptable. We may rather die than change some conditions in our lives. At least we tell ourselves this, and the reality is that we see or feel the pain of the status quo is within what we consider an acceptable parameter. It may not be comfortable or pleasant, but is what we are willing to live with, at least until we can find a solution that seems less painful than the condition itself. Patience is a virtue, but can also be a vice. Impatience is generally a vice, but it can also be a virtue. The question as to when it is a virtue and when it is a vice is one of context. The controlling factor is pain as we experience it. Have we actually considered and thought through the situation and the condition that is causing our pain, or have we just followed the path of least resistance and rationalized or ignored a situation until it has grown from minimal to moderately painful because we have neglected to make a change? Our intentions play a role in how we determine when enough is enough, and we will take action to change a situation or condition. What we desire to accomplish or experience often requires action on our part, and our attention and actions can only act in sequential order. Because of this, we are always adjusting our priorities based on our life pains. Our priorities govern what we do with our time, and our pain governs our priorities. This is why we live the majority of our lives in reaction to situations and conditions that are painful for us, rather than doing things that we actually enjoy. High levels of pain obviously demand our immediate attention. We can't tolerate high levels of pain for very long without being overwhelmed. Overwhelm is a condition that results from our unwillingness or inability to take appropriate action to resolve some situation. As pain mounts, we can become desperate and more frantic in seeking ways to resolve the pain. What may have seemed too risky or unpleasant when pain was less becomes worth considering to make the pain stop. Pain can reach an extreme level that actually forces us to try anything to resolve the condition. We all seek to prevent any condition reaching this level. Motivated by pain, we do not always make the best choices or take the best actions to resolve our situation. We can and often do things that in fact make conditions worse when we are acting from this level of high desperation. Somewhere between ignoring minimal pain and acting in desperation to resolve extreme pain is where we spend most of our attention, and our aims and goals are mostly to keep this status quo within this acceptable parameter of what we can live with. I would like to suggest that we develop a new skill to improve the quality and enhance the joy and pleasurable dimensions of our life. The skill we need to make this shift in what our status quo is to actually become more enjoyable and positive is to learn how to lean into the pain in our life. We're naturally wired to avoid pain, but the way to better life is actually to go against our natural predisposition and lean into it. I use this term leaning to describe applying a gradual and increasing focus and attention and pressure in the direction that is giving us discomfort. Doing this is what many motivational speakers refer to as moving out of your comfort zone. You've already accomplished all you can in your comfort zone, and to make anything better, you will have to choose to be uncomfortable in making making some new habit or change. Doing this is best done by leaning. Leaning is pushing into with intention. This is the principle that directs much of the therapeutic body work that I do for clients. I apply a degree of focused pressure on a client's muscles and often hold that pressure constant, which is uncomfortable for them. By holding this pressure, both their body and their mental attention have the opportunity to become aware of the situation and redirect either their thoughts or their degree of muscle contraction to lessen the tension in the area. To really have a release of tension, both redirecting mental energy and physical muscle contraction are required. Some conditions put up a great deal of resistance to change, and others simply melt like hot butter when given the most gentle, persuasive therapeutic touch. What makes the difference between a situation that resists change and one that responds to even the slightest persuasive pressure? Trust and acceptance, as well as disbelief and fear, exist like opposite ends of a scale. What we really need to let go is a sense of security, to feel that it is safe to let down our defenses and our apprehensions, and that nothing bad will happen if we do. We hold on to tension and the status quo mostly because we don't know what living in a different condition would be like, or mean for us on a most primal level. Anxiety, fear of the unknown, governs our hesitation. This is why leaning is such a powerful skill to learn. Leaning doesn't require us to overcommit to any course of action and offers us a minimal level of threat and risk. This does not heighten our anxiety, which is what would prevent us from accepting and trusting a different condition to exist in our body and our lives. When I do body work for a client, I pay attention to the client's breathing as I apply pressure to a muscle, because how someone breathes tells me exactly how they are experiencing the pressure being applied. If someone holds their breath when pressure is applied, it tells me that their pain level has reached a point that they're in a state of fear and anxiety and holding out the hope that they can simply outlast the pain. This is a learned response to pain, and one that dams our growth and learning. We do not learn or grow when we are holding out for something. We simply endure in our status quo. In fact, holding out is a way of recommitting to maintain the status quo. When someone does this in a bodywork session, I will continue to lean into the muscle, giving them an opportunity to make a different choice. This means that I keep the pressure on and their pain level up. I do this and watch their choices to see how committed they are to maintaining the status quo that brought them to seek therapy in the first place. Just because someone has gotten on a massage table doesn't mean that they are ready to move from the status quo condition in their body and their life. People typically don't want or expect to seek to make any changes. This prevailing natural orientation exists and has to be consciously released before they will receive much, if any, benefit from a therapeutic session. This is why the most common experience for most people initially is anxiety or fear. This is why the most common invitation from a massage therapist is to let go. Hopefully, this video will help you understand what letting go means and how to do it, so it's not just meaningless words to you. The skill of letting go is learned. Some people have highly developed the skill to trust and accept by leaning into what is initially uncomfortable. They know that by leaning into pain without forcing a solution or dominating a situation or condition, that the process of change they allow will produce an adaptation to the condition that is eventually less painful than the status quo. People who seek bodywork therapy have learned that this process and developing this skill through repetition and practice improves the quality of their life and the health of their body. Leaning into pain happens when a client starts breathing or keeps breathing while I apply pressure to a muscle. They also generally say something rather than just holding their silence. If someone is holding their breath and not saying anything, they are totally committed to keeping the status quo. This keeps them unreceptive to any benefit I can provide them, and they are essentially wasting their money and both their time and mine. The reality is, to let go, we must be willing to learn and adapt to new information. Our concept of the way things are must be expanded. A mind once opened by a new thought never returns to its original size. A closed mind, on the other hand, will not allow a new thought to come in. As I have mentioned in the beginner's orientation video, effecting a healing process in our bodies necessitates our personal engagement in altering how we interact and interface with our bodies in our daily lives. The value of bodywork will only really fully open to those who accept and seek personal responsibility for wellness and reaching their peak potential. Perhaps you can now see why this is so. The connection between the mind and the body is a personal one. It is governed by your personal intentions. If your intentions are to maintain the status quo at all costs, and you aren't in a situation where your pain level is extreme, it's unlikely, I dare say even impossible, that you will be receptive to the benefits of bodywork. Your level of receptivity is based on how much pain you are in and how you relate that pain to how much you are open-minded to changing. Pain is simply simply the acknowledgement of some situation or condition that isn't optimized in your life and your body. My message to you is that situations and conditions can be optimized if you are open to learning and adapting. It may be good to consider what a blessing it is to have a truly open mind and what that means to your health and well-being. People close their minds in an effort to control conditions and situations, but this strategy always fails. It fails because a closed mind can never understand the reality of the conditions and situations they would seek to control. This makes all their decisions based on false assumptions rather than verifiable facts. They are a prisoner of their own impossible to satisfy need to control something and desire for it to be what they declare it to be rather than what it is. Insisting that the sun in the noonday sky is blue does not make it so. It simply demonstrates how delusional and self-deceived the observer is. But what is the significant question that makes all the difference? Is the observer willing to allow his grip on his version of reality to grow beyond his current belief, or is he somehow invested in keeping his perceptual status quo? Mental willingness is determined by pain level. Unless we actively seek to develop and learn the skill of leaning into pain and allowing our paradigm and muscles to relax rather than resist change. This may seem like a nasty irony that happiness and positive flow of life comes at the price of some discomfort. The beauty of learning to lean into pain rather than avoiding it is that in fact you can pace the speed at which you adapt and prevent yourself from being overwhelmed. By leaning into pain, you give yourself an opportunity to be proactive instead of just reactive. It is the first step in skill to learn to actually starting to be in control rather than having the illusion of being in control. You can determine how much pressure to apply and for how long. The control you are learning may not be control of the situation itself, but it is the control of your responses to the situation. A good bodywork session is founded in the rapport and communication between the client's body and their own mental paradigm, and the communication with the therapist in how much focus or pressure is applied to any particular muscle. As a therapist, I am very skilled at changing the pressure or the intensity of focus or direction and position of the pressure on a muscle. I can be completely responsive to the subtle changes in tension in a muscle as well as the things the client communicate and say when they are getting therapy. Far more often than not, the limiting factor as to how much benefit a client receives is the client themselves and their openness and skill at leaning into the process. There are clients who in 25 minutes can completely relax every muscle in their body into a state of ultimate bliss. There are also clients after 90 minutes of struggling to relax, still holding their breath and holding muscle tension in significantly large percentages of their body. I essentially bring the same skill to both sessions. The difference is the client's skill at leaning into and letting go of tension. It's all about leaning into what we naturally would avoid, to gently persuade ourselves to grow and change rather than wait for conflict in moderate to high or extreme pain to drive us to grow. We can choose to humble ourselves and growth will be less painfully motivated, or we can balk and resist and life will eventually force change upon us or break us. Consider which is stronger, a tree which stands firm against the wind until a storm breaks apart its mightiest branches and brings it crashing to the ground, or a reed that bends gently in the wind and remains unbroken. Leaning into pain is like the reed bending in the wind and not breaking. Which is the kinder path? That is what you will want to consider. Thank you for watching this video.